Hello and welcome. This is Taj McCameron, and I'm sure you're wondering, who am I? Well, I am someone that began and made the decision to begin a journey back in 2000 and I believe it was 14. And I'd gone through a lot. And I knew at that particular point in time, my life wasn't in a place that I wanted it to be. And because it wasn't in a place that I wanted it to be, I needed to make a change. In 2004, my mother had passed away. Upon her passing, within a year of her death, I found out that the name that I had had all of my life was not my name. I found out that the name on my birth certificate did not match the name that I was born or I had grown up with. I found out that the woman that I knew as my mother for all the time that I had known her was not in fact my mother, but a aunt of my biological mother. I found out that within about 2 years of my mother's passing in 2006, we lost our home. And from there, I went from jumping from place to place to place. And with that, I kind of found myself in a state of loss. I went from staying in a home that I had grown up in from the time I was 10 to 17, 18 years old, to now going to live with this family member, to live with a person I was with at the time for 18 months, going back to live with a parent that was my surviving parent, that person losing the home, going from there to staying with a college friend's mother that worked for the Goodwill, going from there for 6 months and going back to the original place, family member's house that I was staying at for another 5 or so years. Went through the processes. I did the job searches. I did all of the things that you're supposed to do when you are in a constraint. And I remember when I was staying with a woman that I went to college with, her daughter, and she told me when I first met her, in the situation that you're in, you're not going to be able to find stable work until you're stable. And I always seemingly felt like that's not the case. That's not possible. So then I ended up going to stay with that family friend, and I stayed there for 5 years, and I was stably at her home for that period of time and couldn't find work during that time. I'd been going to college throughout all of this time frame, and every time I was at a point or a juncture for either the year end quarterly final or the mid-term final, something would happen and I'd have to move. So usually when I had a juncture where I had to move from one place to another, I ended up having something like that occur. And yeah, one might say, well, you stayed at this particular family member's house for 5 years. You didn't finish your college degree. No, because I actually ran out of grant money during that time frame, 8 credits before the end of my graduating term. So I could have either done the 8 credits or 16 credits and came out with a business administration, fashion, and entrepreneurship thing for what I was going to school for. And I ended up not having that. And I was at a point in time I wanted to do something different. So I started my own fashion blog. It was like, I gotta do something. I can't just sit around the house and do nothing. So I started my own fashion blog. I was a fashion major. I started my fashion blog. I actually got in contact through the people I was staying with at the time. They wanted me to start to look for assistance. They wanted to help me find work. So they went and helped me get a PRP worker to help me find work. But the PRP worker and I've never seen this happen before in my life. The PRP worker, whose job was to help me find a job, couldn't find me a job. We were both sitting there like, what do we do now? We done did everything. We did everything that we knew to do. And the PRP workers company also had me in therapy at the time. And the therapist actually suggested, why don't you start going to meetup? So I started going to meetup. And I went to this business event randomly. It was one of the ones that were on the meetup. And I met a businessman there who was doing weekly events, monthly events. And I said, you know what? I like being around business people. So I started going to those events. And because I like that, it was an excuse to get dressed. It was an excuse to get ready. I would go to his dinners, and I would sit there and talk, and I would just sit there and enjoy just having the conversation with other business people. And I was always there, and he took a liking to me because of the fact that I was always coming, and I was always suggesting it, and I was doing all of this while still trying to get my stability. And I started going to fashion events. I was doing the things I was good at doing when I was in college. So I was actually exposing myself and networking at the time. So I was able to get some things to open up for me. And the gentleman that was at that business event, Will Holmes, I implore you for the help that you've given me. He connected me with a woman that worked for the news company in the city that I lived in, and she actually was doing fashion shows. So I have photos, tons of photos from being at front row seat at these fashion shows, local fashion shows. I even would go to, there's in the city I live at, I don't know if they're doing it anymore with all the things that have transpired, but there's Baltimore Fashion Week. And I never was able to get the tickets to get to the Baltimore version of the Fashion Week, but I knew certain events that were surrounding that would be run, and I would go to those events and sit front row seats, have VIP tickets, all those types of things, and I would just, this was what got me through that season. I was still doing what it was that I was created to do. And all in that, I ended up having to move from that location, and then I ended up staying with my parent again for another year. And I said, you know what? It's time for me to start and go and jump off and do my own thing, because this ain't working. I can't get anything to move here. I'm in the groups, I'm doing the things, and nothing's happening. So I went to my home. I was born in New York City. So I went back to New York. I said, if nothing's working here, I gotta make something move somewhere. So I go to New York, and some people might say, you went to New York, you just jumped off and left and went to New York. And I did the research. They say if you're supposed to go to New York, you get about 18 months worth, anywhere 18 to 2 years worth of salary in order to move to New York and have a sustainable lifestyle while you're doing whatever it is that you're doing. Yeah. That didn't work for me. I went straight with nothing. And when I went straight with nothing, I ended up in a situation where I was in homelessness for 6 weeks. I went to the shelter system. I stayed at one shelter for a month, and then I stayed at another one for 3.5 years. And the last year I was there, they moved us to a hotel. And during that time frame, I was still grinding. Meaning, I'm like, I'm here. At least if I'm here, I took the jump, I took the leap. I'm gonna go with this. So, what I found was that the people that are in those systems, they don't help you. They say, oh, we want you to find work. We want you to gain an income so that we can put you in housing, but they don't help you. They really do not help you with that. So I found myself every time they sit up there and do that, they would work with you for about 6 weeks, 2 months. I think the longest was maybe about 3 months. And I had one worker that worked with me. She worked for a longevity of a period of time and kept me on as a case, but it was one of those situations, she wasn't doing nothing for me. I came to her with everything I had. I came to her with resumes. I did everything she asked me to do. Everything that she asked me to do. And nothing. And then I just said, okay, you don't want to help me? I'm going to go do it myself. I knew about where the events were. I knew where to go. I knew the very same thing I was doing in Baltimore, I went and I did in New York. But see, they capped me off at my ability and what I could do while I was there. So it wasn't like I wasn't doing anything. I was doing. I still had blogs. I was building websites. I had a lot of things that I had my hands into, but they were not helping me. And then it was what I felt like I was seeing was that it was almost a cup game. They would move you around or not help you. And then when you stopped asking them for help, they would track you down only to not help you anymore. So it was that element of, you're chasing me to not help me, but I'm going to go do this myself. Because see, the fact of the matter was, they had it set up in such a way that no matter whose help you went, even if you left the place, because I did for a period of time, I left. And I went to get assistance from another location in another place to get all of my paperwork taken care of. And they said that because you're in the system at this place, this person's going to get all of the benefit off of any work that is done elsewhere. So it was like, I used to call it like this. It was like being in an abusive relationship, and every time you call the police are reporting you back to your abuser. That's what that was like. I mean, I was doing everything. Between fighting that battle, I'm still trying to creatively maneuver. Now, one might say, how in the world did you do all of that with all of this going on? There's one answer. I did it with God. I couldn't have done what I did in the past 17 to 18 years of my life without having a walk with God. I walked with God throughout 2014 all the way up and through now. I walked with God. It took my life coming to a point, and God has a way that when He needs your attention, He will show you. When I first started, I'm going to be honest with you, I used to look at horoscopes because that's what I knew. People look at horoscopes. What's the big deal? And I remember that when things started to get pressing where I was at the place that I was staying for 5 years, I ran into a horoscope that said, you have to do something now, because if you do not, this is going to get worse for you. And that's when I made the decision that I would give my life to God and ask the Lord, what do you need for me to do in this season? Because it's not working for me. And during that time frame, I started to pray regularly. I created a routine, but I didn't start to see movement in my life until I started a fasting regimen within the year that I began to walk with God. Now, one might say, all that stuff you went through, a lot of people sit up there and say that God's supposed to show Himself in your life, and there should be miracles in your life. Sweetheart, let me tell you something. The fact that I'm sitting here with a right mind in the places and spaces that I walked through, been through, and walked out of, that's a miracle. When I was staying in that shelter, which happened to be the best shelter in New York City, that it's the best top 5 I could have. If I showed you what I saw in that place, you would say that's a damn lie. And it's funny because it was a woman that I roomed with while I was there, and she broke her foot, and they had to move her because she could no longer take the steps, because you had to walk up 3 flights of steps if you were on the 3rd floor. They moved her to another shelter in another part of the city. And when they did, she called me because we were actually, she used to be my photographer. She did my photos when I was in New York, and I was her assistant for a period of time. See, I was doing things. It's just like when you're a creative, you don't get paid like everybody else. So I was operating while all of this stuff was happening. And she called me back and she said, yeah, they moved me to this location. Yeah, that is one of the best ones. And I was like, if this is the best and you telling me that's bad, then what the heck are they doing in this system? And I'd had conversations with other people. They said they don't help you. And it's funny. I get irritated anytime I hear news reports about how they help the people, because I hear it on the news even in the city that I'm in right now, about how they try to help the people get off the street. I know what you do. You do the same thing that the people do in New York. The exact same thing. This is why they're on the street in the first place. Because they get sick and tired of hearing false promises. So they walk out. That's what they do. But this isn't about that. This is what I've been through. I remember nights that I spent in that place where women would scream at the top of their lungs about, I gotta get out of here. I gotta get out of here. And it was almost, spiritually, it was a trap. Because you see, people would actually go through the process. I remember, it brought tears to me. There was a woman that had gotten a job. She got 2 jobs and she was going to get a good apartment. The actual shelter called and said something to them jobs. She lost both jobs and was stuck there. And then these people turn around. The people that are staying there end up falling into drugs, sex, alcoholism. And I was watching this and I was like, Lord, what in the world? How am I here? And cleanliness, Jesus Christ, let's just not talk about that, okay? But what am I really talking about here? I walked through that experience. And I came out with the understanding that if it wasn't for God, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. The fact that I would pray every single night. When you're in a situation like that, the level of prayer that you pray, that I would pace the floors every time I got the room to myself and pray. I'd pray for the women. I'd pray for myself. I remember there was a woman that I prayed for. She came in. I did write a book about it. It's coming. The woman came in one night. It was about 5 o'clock in the morning. She had on a full, not even a hijab. She had on, you ever see those prime ministers over in Israel that have on the full black? She had the full thing. And she came in talking crazy. Talking about machetes and death and killing. And I'm sitting up there at 5 o'clock in the morning, half asleep, saying, I'm not going to sleep for the rest of the morning. I just might as well lay here and stay awake. But what ended up happening is I prayed in tongues all morning. And later that evening, there was another woman that was brought in within an hour of her. Because they would make women sit downstairs for all night long. And then they'd bring them in at 5 o'clock. But then make them get up at 6 or 7 o'clock and leave the building. But she seemed very scary. And this other woman came in. And I know the Lord situated the situation because the woman came in and was only there for one day, and so was the other woman. This woman, by the end of that afternoon, when I came back, the woman that had been in the all black, she had a mental breakdown. The other woman that came in was a Christian as well. And I walked up to her and I said, would you mind if I prayed with you? The other woman said, I prayed too. Can I come? And the 3 of us prayed for this. The 3 of us came together in prayer. And when I tell you, we prayed, that woman came out. By the next morning, they moved her. The woman that prayed with me, I know she was only there to pray for that woman because she was gone the next morning too. And things like this would happen. And I used to ask God, you leaving me here, but everybody else gets to leave. And it's like, I had to stand in the gap. I had to stand in the gap for these people. And I can't tell you how many times in different ways I needed to pray. I'll tell you about that one. I tell you, lie to you not, I met Satan twice. I met Satan twice while I was there. And some of them just, the expressions on their face, I was like, oh, that's Satan. He came to visit me. Because when I tell you the look, if looks could kill, the way that person looked at me, it's like, you don't know me from nobody. And you are looking at me like this. They were trying their best. And when I tell you, the 3 people, I believe it was 3 different people that had this spirit on them in my time frame. And when I tell you that I knew, and I literally got spiritual confirmation that when you have a person look at you like that, and the types of things that these particular people were doing, it was like, I'm going to trap you in something to keep you in this. Because if I do not, you're going to get set free. And I was like, okay. And the Lord brought me into those places that I was in to stand in the gap. That's what I was doing. I was standing in the gap for the people that were there, because there wasn't anybody in there praying like I was praying. And when it was necessary, the Lord would bring me prayer partners to pray with me. That I became so well known in that place for prayer that people would come up to me and say, hey, Prayer Warrior, how you doing? For prayer. Prayer. I can't tell you the many stories. And God, I used to wonder, why is it that you won't let me stabilize myself here in the city outside of this place? He would not let me, but he made me pray. And I can't tell you the consecrations that I went through sheer hell. And some of the worst of them were during the midst of full moons. The full moon nights. Oh, if I could tell you the experiences that I walked through. So when I tell you, you don't know me, you don't know me. If I just did a live on the experiences that I experienced, I could do a live just on the homelessness situation and a live just on the experiences alone. But why do I say this? I've been through trials and tribulations. I've walked through hell and back. And through that time frame, I took good notes. So, and just FYI, for the amount that they said before I left, meaning if you take about 18 months worth of salary and then go to New York, you'll be able to survive. Because let me tell you something. The pandemic hit in 2000. I left in 2001, August of 2001. So I was there for about 2 years of the pandemic, just about, which was probably 18 months. And prior to that, had I had that much salary, I wouldn't have lasted. Because see, the way that it works in New York, you have to have 40 times one salary to even qualify for an apartment. And if I had saved up that much, I might have survived up until the pandemic started, and the pandemic flow would have kept me for the rest of the time. But you know what kept me during that time? God, the favor of God. He always brought somebody to bring to me what I needed when I needed it. If I needed food, because I was a consecrator and a faster, guess what? When I came off my consecration, I had as much food as I needed. I was a sower. Any money. I don't care if I found a penny on the ground. I would take it to the church and I would drop it off. Guess what? A penny usually came back in dollars. Dollars came back in tens. Tens came back in hundreds. Am I making sense? So when I got $12,000 released to me, its name was Pathways, 7 Steps to Success. Pick up your bed and walk. In the process of walking out this journey that I've walked out in the past 17 years, I had to learn to find God. I believe I went through a lot that sustained me during a period of time from 2006 to 2014. That was part of the journey. But the darkest phase of my life, I walked through after I gave my life to God. One might say, hey, you're not supposed to say that you walked through some of the darkest parts after you gave your life to God. I did. Because you see, the one thing that most people don't understand is when you give your life to God, God's got to comb out all that nastiness that you didn't know was up under there, that you didn't understand was up under there, generational curses, all these kinds of things that were up under everything that you thought your life was. But when you give it to God, that sustainability line, that everything's just keeping itself together, just holding itself, just managing to maintain itself. I got to a place in my life, and I remember that moment, and that's when I went to New York, where I said, I feel like I'm sitting on a trampoline that is just before rock bottom. I need to hit rock bottom so that I can come up, because you can't hit rock bottom if you're on a trampoline. A trampoline can be five inches from the floor, but if you don't hit the floor, you can't come up. The trampoline is going to keep you jumping. So when I went to New York and I went through that experience, I hit rock bottom because I knew as soon as I hit rock bottom, I could come up. And I did. I came up and I came back. But what I learned amongst that journey over that time frame, or that 4.5 years, I walked with God. I came up. Some people may look at my life right now in the state it is in this particular moment. It looks like I'm right where I left off. Meaning when I left for New York, I'm in the exact same place. But see, guess what? There was a valley when I was in New York. I went down. But when I went down, I was able to come up with the right principles, the right thought processes, the ability to understand certain things, the ability to understand systems, understand areas, understand how cities work, also understanding, gaining knowledge in my word, gaining knowledge through understanding, gaining knowledge through study, and also having spiritual mentors that walked me through. And some people will sit up there and say, oh, I got a spiritual mentor. This person is spiritual. I found me a godly woman who mentored me through that entire season. She walked with me. And she may not have been a direct contact that I could pick up the phone and call, but every time she saw me in her rooms, in her lives, in her what have you, she spoke directly to me. And I mean that literally. She would sometimes literally stop the broadcast of what she was doing and say, this is what I need to tell you. God's telling me to tell you this to you. Yeah. And I would move accordingly from that. So between the prayer, the mentorship, and the people that got me through that season, Because God takes you down to build you up, and he breaks you gracefully. All the things I just told you that I walked through, all the things that I just told you that I went through, got me through. But you know how I got through those experiences? Having a prayer life, reading the Word of God, constantly keeping music that was positive, whether it was gospel or just positive R&B, keeping teachers in my ear that were speaking what I needed to hear at the time to walk me through that season. And when I tell you, walking through a season with the ability to fast and pray gave me a level of spiritual clarity that most did not have. And let me tell you, when it came down to some of the stuff that they were trying to feed us in that place, you fast real quick, real fast in a hurry. And, but when I needed food, I had friends in the city that were like, oh, I know this place we can go and we can get food for free. There were churches that were giving away food. And when I tell you they were giving away good food, I went and did an entire culinary course while I was there. I did that too. I'm culinary trained. I had food that entire time I was there. That was 6 weeks. 6 weeks of gourmet, French, Mexican, Persian. They made everything. So when I needed to eat, I had my food. But God will call me into consecration. Some people ain't willing to do that. Some people ain't willing to not eat for a week. Some people ain't willing to turn a plate down for 21 days just so that they can get clarity of what the Lord needs for them to say, hear who they need to touch, why you're going through this particular season. There were certain things that I went through during that season. I had dreams about them a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks before it happened, because I was that spiritually centered with God that the Lord showed me in my dreams that I was going to experience that. Some of them felt like nightmares, I'm going to be honest with you. But when I walked through the experience, I was like, oh, that's what you were trying to show me. I was going to walk through this. Because I was willing to walk with God. Some things we walk ourselves into, but some things God uses us in, and we're not going to be able to circumvent that part of the process. Walk through it, experience it, grow through it, go through it. But as you're going through it, learn something. So why am I here? Why am I telling you this? Because I walked through a season of my life that I won't wish on my worst enemy that experience. And there were seasons before that I walked through. I told you. But in going through that experience, I learned things. I grew mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and socially, and financially. I learned how to give my seed to God. A lot of people sit up there and say, oh my God, don't talk about seed. Don't talk about this. Don't talk about giving your money to these churches and so on and so forth. Let me tell you something. Giving your money to the church isn't about the church. It's about giving your seed to God. It just so happens that the church is where you're dropping it off at. And you don't have to do that at a physical building. You can do it to an online ministry. You can find somebody that you trust. But you got to do it. That 10% changed my life. Because I went from pennies to dollars. Dollars to hundreds. Hundreds to thousands. So I learned those principles. I saw improvement in my health. I changed my diet. I changed my prayer life. I changed my meditation on the word, not meditation in yoga. Because when you do yoga, you're actually serving another God. And it says in the word that you are not to bend your knee to another God. And some people might be like, oh, don't say that. I serve the Lord Jesus Christ. I do. If that's not what you serve, Mo, I'm not going to make you come to Jesus. I'm going to just tell you that's who I serve. And as I'm serving Jesus and you're serving your God, you can take all of the principles out of God, but the results may be different. Let's see what comes of that. But with that being said, I come here because I've been through the wilderness. I've been through the darkest of valleys. I've been through a darkness where it looked like I could not see my hand in front of my face. And I turned to the Lord and I said, God, why you got me here? I went through seasons of torrential downpours of storms in my life. And I said, God, why you got me here? I went through seasons of transition that was like, oh my God, why you got me here? Why you got me going through this? Why you got me going through this darkness? Why you got me? And I walked through. I went through. I worked through those seasons. With God. I saw the rains. I saw the darkness. I saw where it didn't seem like there was going to be a way out. And I saw parts where it seemed like it was so dark and the valley was so wide and so lengthy that I see a path and God's saying, keep going. But I don't see no light at the end of this tunnel yet, Lord. Keep going. Lord, it seemed to get worse. Keep going. And there was one thing I was praying for that I stood on for a long time. And I still stand to this day for it. Because I remember the day that I prayed for it. The first time I was sitting in the midst of a gathering online. We were on a conference call. And the woman said that if you desire this, pray into it. And from then till now, I've prayed into it. And within about 2 years of me starting that prayer process into that, the Lord sent me a person to hone the direction of my prayer in relation to this thing. And I started to pray. I started to create the things that were necessary in order to write the vision. Because see, writing the vision and making it plain is necessary. I'm talking about for your partner in life, the person that's supposed to walk with you. I'm talking about for your finances. I'm talking about for your living situation, your businesses, and anything that you're putting your hands to. If you have a family that's acting like they out of their plumb mind, you got to have a vision for that family too. And guess what? I was sitting at the altar at a church while I was in New York. I discovered it within a year of me being there. And I believe sowing into that church made a major difference in my life. There were things that were released to me during that season and that time that I put prayers on the altar. And see, let me tell you something. I ain't no baby prayer. This is why they called me a prayer warrior when I was in that place, because I would pray. My prayers in writing literally looked like a parenthetical essay. sometimes I would actually get on the nerves of the people that were reading the prayer requests at my church. Because how do I know? Because they was peeping it, because they'd come back to me and say, well, how you gonna do this? And I'm like, you negative Nancy. One, why you all up in my prayers like that? And how dare you turn around and say anything negative about something that I put on the altar to pray about? See, this is how the devil works, because some of your worst people will be literally standing at the altar at the church. And I'm not saying that in order to say you're not supposed to go to the church. You're supposed to go to church. But if you allow people that Satan has sent to be blocks and embargoes to the breakthrough in which you were supposed to be coming there to get, you're going to miss it every time. Because people are going to come there to offend you because there's a spirit of offense on them. And they just don't like the fact that you're willing to pray for those things. You're willing to stand for those things. You're willing to put a seed on the altar for those things. You're always putting those things onto the altar. You're always praying for those other people. You're putting things upon the altar aside from. But as you're listening to me, are you understanding it? It was that type of lifestyle that got me out of those dark places. I wouldn't throw away that type of lifestyle. And when I say that type of lifestyle, I mean the way that I pray, the way that I write down prayer requests. I got a note in my phone right now of prayers that I pray for specific people at specific times. And I got a group of people that I send it to cover me in prayer, aside from my mentor. So with that being said, I had to develop a lifestyle that covered every area of my life in such a way that protected me spiritually. Because I told you, Satan came to me 3 times. And there's actually a scripture that talks about that. I might, Satan tempted Jesus 3 times. There you go. But yeah, so, and I don't laugh. I ain't being facetious about that. I know. If you saw what I saw, you would know too. But with that being said, you got to know your place and your position. You got to know if you're seeking change in your life, you got to make the changes in order for the change to stick. And some people aren't submitted enough to make those changes. And in them not being submitted enough to make those changes, certain things fall apart and perish. It's a decision to walk this walk. It's a decision. And it's a choice that you have to make. But if you choose not to make it, that's on you. But what I'm standing in this particular position right now saying to you is this. I walked through valleys. I walked through hard places. I learned what it was to get out of those places. Does your situation look like mine? Might not. But I know this, that the place I am, it does not reflect where I'm going. And when I get to where I'm going, there'll be a leveling up. Spiritually, I've already elevated. And I'm trying to help you to elevate to that place. But some of you haven't even started the journey. It was my decision to start the journey in 2014 to get me to where I am. If I can get you from the beginning to where I am, even now, I've done a good job. Some of you, you went through homelessness. Some of you, you've gone through, you are that creator. And if you are a creator, it seems like it's almost a badge of honor to go through homelessness. And I'm going to tell you this. It builds a tenacity in you that if you couldn't survive that, you were not going to be able to survive the creative world, because there are sharks, there's a viciousness there, and it's not a pretty place. But I believe that what I walked through in the wilderness literally helped me to be able to be prepared for that. So because of that, I've come to the understanding that in this phase of my life, that I need to take what I learned and help somebody else grow through it and go through it wherever they are. Because it's not what I went through that's going to help you. It's the formula in which I learned in order to create a system that helped me walk through it that you need. You understand what I'm saying? And because of that, how can I help you mentally keep your mind in whatever situation that you're in? Emotionally, keep your emotions when people are trying you, testing you, walking through those experiences. What can I do to physically help you when you don't have enough? Because I walked through culinary, because I walked through these seasons, I know the tricks of what it is that you can eat in order to keep your diet healthy as much as possible. And I also know if you got to supplement, how to operate with that supplementation of the food. There are places that you can go. In New York, there used to be a couple of real nice corner stores that did juicing. They saved my life on the days that I like to juice. And when I talk about the spiritual clarity that I had. Physically, I was walking every day. I walked across Brooklyn Bridge every day. 2 times a day. You know, you had that grandmother that said, I used to walk back and forth so amount of miles also. Yep, that was me. That was me. Physically, financially, how I managed the money that I did have when I had money, how I opened my accounts, how I structured my accounts while I was going through those periods, what I did in order to, I actually improved my credit while I was going through that season. I pinched, I did what I needed to do, I created secure credit cards, so on and so forth. How to keep myself financially, socially, understanding and being able to identify the spirits on people and to move and maneuver accordingly, understanding the spirit of discernment and understanding how to discern different people, and then also understanding sometimes you operate in criticalness and deciphering between the two, and not operating in highly critical thought processes when it comes to people, because some of us have been burned. I actually walked through a forgiveness course recently, and it's understanding when you have been burned before, especially as a child of God, people gonna burn you all the time. People have always tried to burn me. But once you've identified what that is, you understand that the Lord allowed you to go through that cycle over and over again with different people because of the fact that there was something that you needed to learn. I talk about this when I talk about chess. I did a couple of videos for my ministry for chess. And I even did a podcast talking about understanding how to strategically operate. Because the way that you think is the same way you're going to play a chessboard. And understanding you're not playing checkers with these people, you're playing chess. And understanding that they may have spirits that they're operating in that they don't even discern. And some of those people may be Christian, sorry. So it's understanding that. And then understanding your own belief systems. Right now, the biggest thing that you're going to come into contact with is the great divide between real prophets and false prophets, and what real ministry is and fake ministry, because everyone has their own opinion as to what it is. But you understand why we have 3,000 different religions? Because somebody went into this religion, came to the understanding, I don't like what they did, so I'm going to create my own religion. I'm going to take what their basis was, I'm going to create something completely different, and this is going to be my religion. And this happened 3,000 times. But the one true is walking with God. Because it all comes back to God. Because remember, when Elijah took down the 400 prophets of Jezebel, it was God that was the reason that he was able to do that. So, you may not serve God. That's your decision. But I'm telling you from what I've learned and how God has worked in my life, that I know that God can make a way. He made a way for me. And I want to teach you the way in which he made for me to get me through that dark place. I'm going to show you how to walk through that boot camp. And I'm going to assist you in whatever way. If you want to know about business, I'm going to help you figure out how to build your business. But I'm also going to help you figure out how to build your diet so that you can maintain yourself in order to build that business. If you want to understand the exact path that I walked in order to get me through, then I'm going to give you the thing that I used in order to pick up my own bed and walk, and the process in which I walked through it. If you need the understanding, because see, I can help you in 2 areas. I can consult you on business, because I know business all day. That was my main beginning decision that I was going to do when I first came into what it was that I wanted to do with my life. Business. I wanted to be a coach. But you know what I found out? Coaching is for your business. Well, actually, coaching is for your person, meaning that's for your life. That's for you. The pathway that I took, the things that I experienced, and the formula which I determined, that's going to help your person get through your traumas and your struggles in your day-to-day. But the things that I learned business-wise throughout that experience in time, and the tenacity I had to keep moving and keep developing and keep creating websites and keep doing the things that I did in order to maintain, and the types of things in which that I learned were the things that I was good at and needed to be helping people with, that's the consulting. I do both. So how does one affect the other? Easy. I got God in both, because God helps me with my life, and God covers everything I put my hands to. There's a book called Make God Your CEO. I have it on Audible. I listen to it. It helps you get you through your life and how God works in your life to get you through your life, your business, what have you. But the Bible itself gets me through my life on a day-to-day basis. Prayer, fasting, worship, all of these things. It's the understanding of the development of the routine in which you develop in order to get you through your wilderness, through your boot camp that the Lord needs to take you through. You may be starting your journey. Let me help you. Some of you may be on the end of your wilderness and you're getting ready to walk into your expanded place. Let me help you there too. Because that means we can walk together there. But for the ones that are in the beginning journey, I can help you get from where you're starting to where I am now. Something I learned from a coach a long time ago. I think of Lisa Nichols, actually, because I did follow her before I wrote my first book. I was listening to Lisa Nichols, and she said that a coach can only get you to what they have been through. Well, I've been through a series of experiences. Let me give you the formula to help you get through your experiences to get you to where I'm at. And then once we get you to where I'm at, we can get you through to the next part. Because I guarantee you, by the time you get through that part, I'll be to the next part and I can help you get through there too. Because the fact of the matter is, we're about living that, royal life. And as children of God, we are walking in the royalty of God. Whether our lives look like it right at this moment or not, it's about creating the steps, walking through the micro steps to the macro steps, and getting from that valley up to that mountain. Because once you get over the mountain and cross over into your wealthy place, let me get you up to the top of that mountain. But I'm at the end of the valley and I haven't even walked in yet. I'm going to get you through that too. Because that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get you from that beginning of that valley to the top of that mountain. If you're willing to walk with me. So the question is, are you willing to walk with me? And that's on you. So I hope that this has blessed you. So if you decide that you're interested in further knowledge, if you want to know more, you can start with Steam to Live the Dream. That's my original podcast. But if you want something that's a little bit more heavier Christian-wise, go to Tajma on Spotify. So until next time, this is Tajma Cameron.